All right, Charger Nation, welcome back to the Charger Leadership Academy. We are here with Charlene Taylor, women's basketball alum from the class of 1990. Charlene, welcome. How are you today?
I'm good, thank you. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. We're happy to have you. Tell us a little bit about your time as a Charger, kind of what you learned, what type of lessons you learned back during the late 80s here at the University of New Haven.
Wow, the late 80s. Sounds so far away. My time as a Charger was great. I came from a small town, Beaver Falls. The way I got to UNH was the coach at the time, Jan Rossman, was a native of Beaver Falls. She had a good friend that followed our high school team, and she told Jan that Joy and I would be a good candidate to recruit. So we came to UNH. I fell in love with UNH because I wanted to get into law enforcement, forensic. They had a great forensics program at the time. So that's pretty much why I came to UNH. I really didn't really come for basketball. Basketball is how I got there, but I really fell in love with the criminal justice program. The time there was great because it was small. It was nothing like the campus is today. Believe me, I think we had like 6 buildings on the campus, and then you go by there now and it's so much larger, but it was a big family atmosphere. All of the athletic departments supported each other. So that was great. We always had a packed stadium or a packed gymnasium. The football team, lacrosse team, baseball always came to our games and supported us. So it was great. And of course, winning the national championship in '87, being the first team to do that was a big thing. Way before UConn was ever as big as it is, it was UNH.
Right.
That's a trivia question that I always tell people. They are always like, who was the first team to ever win the national championship for women in Connecticut? And they always say UConn. And I'm like, time out. It was the University of New Haven. So that was a good time during that time.
You got to teach them. We were doing it way before UConn here at the University of New Haven, right?
Oh yeah, definitely.
Well, no wonder you guys had packed stands. You guys always had good teams and plenty to cheer for.
Yes, great time.
Tell me what you did after you graduated and what your career was.
After graduating from UNH, I coached for a little bit. I coached at UNH for several years. I went also to Quinnipiac University and coached there for a couple years. And Taikio Post. And then after coaching for several years, I finally became a Connecticut State Trooper, which I served the state of Connecticut for 23 and a half years, and retired in April of 2017.
So tell me a little bit about some of the leadership lessons maybe that you learned as a student athlete that carried over into law enforcement.
I believe the biggest thing that I learned in leadership is, number one, you can't ask anyone to do anything that you yourself would not want to do. So if you're giving only 50%, you can't ask that next person to give 100%. You always want to give your best. Always challenge yourself. Get out of your comfort zone. That was one thing that I had to learn, to get out of my comfort zone, and to know that there's no bad question. Like, there's no dumb question to ask. I know people always say that, but that's really true. The only bad question is the one that's not asked.
Absolutely. And so what did you really take away from 20 years working as a state trooper, and how did it impact you as an individual?
Well, first of all, being a student athlete helped me to be a good state trooper. The hard work that I put in, all of the training and the discipline that I had as a basketball player, always wanting to, I'm 5'1" at best. And so I was always the smallest person, not really, I always challenged myself. I always wanted to do something that no one would expect a 5'1" person to do. So leaving UNH, my biggest thing was I wanted to be on the all-time rebounding list when I left. So I worked hard at toning that, becoming a good rebounder. So when I left UNH, I left at number 9, I believe, when I graduated. And so when I wanted to become a state trooper, everyone was like, oh, you're too small, you're too short, you're not going to make it. And I just thought back to how I worked on the court to perfect what I did as a basketball player, and that translated over into who I was as a state trooper.
What type of advice do you have for our current student athletes?
As far as leadership wise is to, like I said, always challenge yourself, always set some goals for yourself. Don't be content with just where you're at. Always want to grow. As long as you're growing, you will always be a good leader. And don't be afraid to take criticism.
That's an important lesson, especially with coaching is certainly something that's difficult, and you knew that for your 2 or 3 years of coaching after graduation. As a good coach, you have to be able to be critical and give criticism, positive criticism, in order to make your student athletes better, right? And if
Right.
as an athlete, if you can't take it and you can't grow from it and really internalize what they're trying to teach you, you're not going to get anything from good coaching. So, Charlene, I got to ask, what have you been doing since you retired?
Uh, I've been working as a food truck inspector, kind of. I'm kind of like the vending enforcement officer for the city of New Haven. So I go around to all the food trucks and I have to taste all the food and make sure they have their health is up to code, that they're licensed. So it's not a good job for the waistline, believe me. And besides that, I'm also an ordained minister. I got a degree. I went back to school and got a bachelor's degree in theology. So I'm also an ordained minister. So when I'm not doing weddings or counseling, I'm tasting food down at New Haven.
That's not half bad. What was it that made you want to go back to school and become an ordained minister?
Well, growing up, I always wanted to be two things, and that was a minister and a state trooper. And so I always set goals. I always wanted to accomplish that, and so here I am.
It's fantastic. Charlene, before I let you go here, you mind giving a word of advice for our alumni out there, maybe who haven't been as connected with the university, who can get back in touch with our university and what they can do for our current student athletes?
I would just say I would advise them to reach out. This is definitely a difficult time. They're going through something that none of us had to go through. We had we were afforded the ability to have camaraderie and be able to be on campus and experience that whole college lifestyle. In this time, they need people to reach out, let them know that there's other alumni here, that they need questions or just connections. Whether it's a job interview or if you want to do an internship or something like that, any advice that we can give them, I would say to contact you and come on this show, come do this.
That's right. That's a great publicity for the Charger Leadership Academy. Appreciate that there.
Definitely.
Well,
I appreciate
Charlene. It's been great to get to catch up with you here a little bit and hear some of your stories from UNH and some of your leadership advice. So I appreciate you coming on the show.
No, thank you so much for having me, John.
All right, Charlene, have a good one.
You too. Bye-bye.